All right, thank you all so much. I'm so pleased to have so many people who've registered for this. I imagine we're going to have people keep joining because the numbers keep ticking up. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes. We're really pleased to see the interest in looking at prevention and management of HABs in Michigan as it continues to be an increasing problem in inland lakes. We at Sea Grant have actually started focusing some of our attention on inland lakes in Michigan because it is getting to be such a big issue. We know that cyanobacteria really like it hot and they really like it with increased nutrients. And so as we see those problems moving northward in our lakes, we're really interested in continuing to facilitate discussion and host information sessions that give watershed associations and other interested parties more information on how we treat and manage our harmful algal bloom problem work. But I'm a nutrient biogeochemist by training. I'm a professor at University of Michigan, and I study nutrients and how they drive harmful algal blooms. Anyway, I've been doing a lot of work on the Great Lakes for the last decade plus, looking at harmful algal blooms there, and specifically how nitrogen can drive toxicity in blooms and ways that internal nutrient processing can actually sustain and maintain blooms sort of beyond legacy nutrient input. So I've also done a bunch of work in a place called Grand Lake St. Mary's in Ohio, an inland lake there, looking at different algal bloom treatments. You may hear more about Grand Lake possibly from some of our speakers today, we'll see. And looking at different phosphorus binding treatments. If you come back in July, you'll hear more about that.
All right, welcome everyone to Harmful Algal Blooms 101 Prevention and Management. So we're so glad that you joined us tonight. My name is Erica Kleitz, and I'm an extension educator with Michigan Sea Grant based in Southeast Michigan. First, we want to start by reminding everyone that MSU programs are open to all. We also want to acknowledge that Michigan State University and our statewide offices occupy the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, the Three Fires Confederacy, of Ojibwa, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. And in particular, the university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. We're including this land acknowledgement as a way to affirm Indigenous sovereignty and as part of our work to hold universities accountable to the needs of the American Indian and Indigenous peoples. All right, so we're starting with a kind of an extended quiz here to get our minds thinking about these topics. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and you're going to just put in the chat whether you think this lake is eutrophic, mesotrophic, or oligotrophic. And if you're not familiar with those terms, that's okay. We'll be talking about it later. You can just guess, but basically they have to do with the amount of nutrients available in the lake. So here we go. First question, is this lake shown in the picture eutrophic, mesotrophic, or oligotrophic? Just go ahead and put it in the chat. All right, we've got a number of different guesses here. I'm gonna go ahead and give you the answer. So the answer is eutrophic. So I'll be talking about this more later. You can't tell everything about the trophic state of a lake at all from a photo, but it is a useful way to kind of start thinking about this question. So if you guessed eutrophic, you got it. If not, we've got several more to try. Okay, so how about this lake? Is this lake eutrophic, mesotrophic, or oligotrophic? All right, looks like we got maybe some more right answers here. So this lake is oligotrophic. Okay, got another one for you here. Is this lake eutrophic, mesotrophic, or oligotrophic? All right, looks like we got a lot of right answers on this one too. So this lake is mesotrophic. So that was the one that is in the middle. So it's in between our eutrophic and oligotrophic. So this graphic is showing kind of like an idealized version of what lakes would look like in these different states. So as I mentioned, mesotrophic, that's the middle one. So eutrophic is something that has more nutrients, more productivity. Mesotrophic is kind of in the middle, and oligotrophic is lower amount of nutrients and productivity. And you can see the difference in these graphics by how many animals and plants and everything are in the eutrophic versus the oligotrophic ones. And then you can see in mesotrophic, it's kind of in the middle. So if we look at the difference between these kind of two endpoints, eutrophic and oligotrophic, eutrophic lakes have high productivity. They often have human influence sources of nutrients. So there's also the process of eutrophication, which is something that can happen to lakes over time. In eutrophic lakes, harmful algal blooms can be a problem because in many cases they're recurring. So they're not rare, they're common. And eutrophic lakes generally can appear more green versus oligotrophic lakes, which are low in productivity. Harmful algal blooms generally are rare in these lakes, and if there is a HAB, it doesn't necessarily indicate a problem. Algae are a natural part of our ecosystems. And these lakes may appear more blue and often very clear, as many of you got when I asked about that before. So hopefully this helped get you started thinking about that. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Scheitler to talk more about HABs.
All right, thank you, Erica. My name is Sarah Scheitler. I work for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services in the Environmental Health Bureau and our HABs program. I'm going to talk a little bit, just to give you a really brief refresher about HABs basics. If you need more of the basics on HABs, you can go back to the 2024 Michigan Sea Grant HABs 101 webinar recording. And then I'll also talk a little bit about how to protect your health when you're encountering HABs. Next slide. All right, so cyanobacteria, when we're talking about what is a HAB, we have to start with algae. So algae are a natural part of lakes, rivers, and ponds, and they're vital to their ecosystems. Cyanobacteria, which is also known as blue-green algae, are not true algae, but they are also a natural part of the ecosystems. They are tiny algae-like organisms that live in water bodies in Michigan and worldwide. Most types of algae, like green or filamentous algae, do not produce toxins. Cyanobacteria, however, can produce toxins that can make people, pets, and livestock sick. Because of that, we call large visible blooms of cyanobacteria harmful algal blooms or HABs. Next slide. So HABs occur in water bodies across Michigan, and these pictures are all of harmful algal blooms in Michigan lakes. They are characteristically bright green or bluish green, but they can sometimes contain other colors like red, pink, or milky white. People often describe HABs as looking like spilled paint or pea soup, or maybe a scum floating on the surface. And those scums can contain mats, clumps, and discoloration. They can also often have a bad odor. There are also certain types of HABs that can occur on the bottom of a water body that are called benthic HABs, and those can sometimes look a little bit different. Next slide. So HABs occur because of a combination of natural and human-caused factors. They develop most often when the water is warm and calm and contains high levels of nutrients, such as phosphorus or nitrogen. Invasive mussels and climate change are also factors that can contribute to HABs development. But it's important to note that the science is still developing around harmful algal blooms, and we don't always fully understand why any individual HAB occurs. Next slide. So HABs have been reported on many water bodies across Michigan, in every US state, and across the world. So this is not an isolated problem. HABs most often occur on lakes or ponds, but they can occur on any water body. We've even had them reported in Lake Superior, which is a low nutrient lake that's very cold. Most HABs in Michigan are reported between May and October, again, when that water is warmer. And in 2024, we had 92 confirmed blooms reported on Michigan water bodies. In Michigan, HABs are more common in the southern lower peninsula, on shallower lakes, and on lakes with an impoundment or a dam. In general, the frequency, duration, and magnitude of harmful algal blooms are expected to increase worldwide due to rising temperatures and increasing nutrient levels in surface waters. Next slide. So why are HABs a problem? HABs can negatively impact many issues that Michiganders care about in addition to human health, including pet health, property values, fishing and recreational opportunities, and tourism income and opportunities. Next slide. So we'll talk a little bit about HABs in your health and how to protect yourself now. Next slide. So why are HABs a health concern? Like I mentioned before, the toxins in HABs can be harmful to human, pet, and livestock health. There are many different species of cyanobacteria in Michigan, which can all produce different varieties of toxins in different levels and sometimes multiple different toxins at the same time. The different toxins that are produced can have different health impacts, including damaging the liver, damaging the nervous system or brain, or damaging the skin. When people are exposed to toxins from HABs, adverse health effects can be as mild as a skin rash to serious illness. And the symptoms of these illnesses from toxins appear in humans within hours to days after exposure, but in animals, it can happen much quicker, sometimes just within minutes. The most commonly reported symptoms in people are skin irritation, gastrointestinal irritation, and respiratory irritation. And the most severe symptoms we see in people and animals are usually caused by swallowing large amounts of affected water. It's important to note there have been no reported human deaths in the United States from cyanobacterial HABs exposure, but dog deaths in Michigan and across the country are not uncommon. Next slide. So how are you exposed? Recreational exposure to HABs is most common in Michigan, such as when you're swimming, wading, or boating on water with a visible bloom. And our general guidance is if you see a bloom, give it room. So basically avoid touching or recreating in scummy water and make sure to keep your children and your pets out as well. Fish caught in a HAB may also contain small amounts of cyanotoxins. And other types of exposure are also possible, such as through contaminated drinking water, which is rare, or if a person encounters HAB-affected surface waters through their work or cultural practices. Next slide. So how do you avoid exposure? When visiting public access sites, always look for and follow posted advisories and warnings like you see on the slide. But they may not always be posted. So you should make a practice to always assess water conditions yourself before entering the water or allowing your children or pets to play in or near it. If you do see a visible algal bloom, we advise you to keep away and also keep away from water that's scummy or has a bad smell. If you see a possible harmful algal bloom that is isolated to one area of a water body, you can minimize your risk by choosing to use another area of the lake or water that's clear and doesn't have visible algae. If the entire water body is affected by the HAB, you should not use the water at all and keep your pets out until that HAB goes away. You should also not motorboat or jet ski through areas with a HAB because they can cause sprays that can actually contain those toxins that you can then breathe in. And like I mentioned before, fish caught in HAB-affected waters may contain small amounts of toxins. MDHHS publishes our Eat Safe Fish guidelines for all water bodies in Michigan, and these should be followed when consuming any wild-caught fish, and they will minimize your risk from all contaminants, including cyanotoxins. Next slide. So what if I do encounter a HAB? Obviously avoid it if possible. If you do see a possible HAB, we ask you to report it to the state of Michigan. You can do that by sending photos and the location to algaebloom@michigan.gov. And if you or your pets do have skin contact with water containing a harmful algal bloom, we advise you to rinse off with fresh, clean water as soon as possible. That could be from a shower or a hose or even bottled water if in a pinch. If you're having symptoms, seek healthcare or call poison control for advice, and obviously go to the emergency room if your symptoms are severe. And if you do seek healthcare, make sure you're mentioning to your provider that you had recent contact with a water body containing a harmful algal bloom. Next slide. Final thing for me here, where to find more information. All of the state of Michigan HABs information is on Eagle's HABs website at michigan.gov/HABs. This site contains links to educational materials as well as technical reports. And also it links to our harmful algal bloom reports map, which you can see on the screen there. MDHHS updates that map weekly with HAB reports that we get, as well as toxin testing results for all water bodies in the state. that we have reports for. You can also reach out to our email address with any questions, and also a note that you can look for advisories and information from your local health department because they are our local partners in HAB's response, and they also can have great information. All right, next slide. I think this is just my contact information as well as those links and email address I mentioned. So that was a very, very brief HABs refresher. And I'll throw it back to Erica to move on to our next presenter.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Geneva, do we have any quick questions to answer before we move on to our next talk?
Yeah, we've got a couple in the Q&A box. This is Geneva Langland, Michigan Sea Grants Communications Editor and your question asker extraordinaire. We have someone wondering if you can clarify when a bloom gets called harmful. Is it only when toxins are present? Is it a bigger category than that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's impossible to tell if a cyanobacterial bloom has toxins in it without doing actual lab tests. So we assume that they all can contain toxins, and so we call basically any cyanobacterial bloom a harmful algal bloom. So hopefully that clarifies.
Another question about reporting. Are reported HABs automatically passed along to the local health departments if Eagle is the one that takes the initial report?
Yes. Yep. So Eagle, MDHHS, MDARD, and DNR all work really closely together with harmful algal bloom reports across the state. And anytime a cyanobacterial bloom or a harmful algal bloom is confirmed, that gets passed on to the local health department. And they're the ones who have authority to post signage or maybe put out a press release locally or even close a beach if it's really bad. Just a note, MDHHS also works with, I think we have 15 local health departments who are partnering with us this year. And those local health departments actually have supplies to do their own site visits and toxin testing. So in that case, they're looped into the information as soon as we get that report so that they can go out and do site visits and testing if they want.